Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. I hope you had a peaceful day and a peaceful week. Of course, we are rounding up the week, at least the work week for now and for the most. And today we're going to review, of course, all the national and global news. We have a couple of deep dives here. I know on Fridays we usually meet for our and with our Honest Plus members. But since I wasn't live yesterday, this is open to everyone. And we will be covering a lot. And this is what essentially is on the menu for today. Yesterday's meetings at the White House, the C5, the so-called, as I refer to them, salespeople of Vladimir Putin, were at the White House. Then President Macron visited, you see here, Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico. He visited Mexico for the first time in 11 years. We're also going to talk more about Angelina Jolie visiting literally the front lines, 1 kilometer away from the Russian forces in Ukraine. Also, Ukraine joining UNESCO. Ukraine have been unanimously voted to be a part of the decision makers at the UNESCO. And then there is a bit of a preview of al-Shara, Syria's new leader, visiting Trump and what Trump administration is doing prior to that meeting. And then, of course, we talk about national news, global news, some awkwardness, some craziness, and everything in between. And then a couple of deep dives. Yesterday morning, I attended a meeting at the Asia Society. This was on Park Avenue. I'm looking for the picture. Don't think that I'm cross-eyed. Do I have a picture here? Well, that's okay. Yesterday morning, there was an on-the-record briefing at the Asia Society. It's on Park Avenue in Manhattan. And there, the ambassador of South Korea was there. Also, U.S. ambassador to APAC was there. And I did cover that yesterday in the article, also in a separate article, but also in yesterday's newsletter. So if you haven't read it yet, please go ahead and read it. I just literally about 20 minutes ago published this as a standalone article, so you can see. What they commented on are the developments at APAC. Were there any deals? I'll preview it. No. Was there anything signed in writing? No. Was there anything binding? No. But there was a very big motion to put Xi Jinping as the leader, so to speak, not just of APEC, but also the partnering countries. He also met, aside from the Asian leaders, he met also with Canadian Prime Minister Carney and also others, and Trump skipped that meeting. And so the main notion there was, and I will quote someone, and whom I'm quoting, you'll find in the article, but they said that while China is at the table, being the decision maker, U.S. is at the golf course, and and Trump did not attend the APEC summit, and he left. Right, he just used that airport, right, where the leaders were arriving to meet with Xi Jinping, who was arriving right at the APEC, and after visiting Malaysia and Japan, Trump just briefly stopped for one dinner with executives, right, with some crypto and AI entrepreneurs and leaders, so to speak, there. And next morning, he met with Xi Jinping and left back home to play golf. And then, obviously, from then on, we witnessed this weirdness from Mar-a-Lago on Halloween, right? And I think due to YouTube rules, I will not be sharing any videos of that. But we do also have a preview of what's next at Mar-a-Lago. Trump arrived just now again, back at Mar-a-Lago. He's spending the weekend there. And without any further ado, we have already fresh pictures coming up from Mar-a-Lago. This is that, whatever you will call it. But what did happen prior to that? And let me say hi to our folks. Hi, Ignacio. Hello. Thank you for being Honest Plus member. Hi, Michael. Thank you for being here. Thank you. You made it. This is awesome. All righty. So first, let's talk about the, of course, government shutdown, but mostly the nationwide disruption, to say the least, of flights, right? And our airspace. As I reported, again, I listed all the airports yesterday in the newsletter. The 40 major airports are affected. And to visualize it, let's take a look at the map. This map was done by New York Times. As you see here, all major airports are being affected. And so this morning, Transportation Department began reducing the number of flights at 40 airports across the country. Officials estimate that roughly 4% of flights will be cut today, and were already cut today, rising to 10% by next Friday. There's also an internal memo circulating that this will be risen to 40% by end of this month. And if you are from US, you know we do have Thanksgiving. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said Wednesday the reductions are intended to alleviate the pressure on air traffic controllers, some of whom have taken second jobs because they are not paid. And as you see here, they are receiving this type of pay stubs, right, for $0, 0 cents. And they're openly posting it, and just as an explanation, as this is what we're doing. And as much as Trump yesterday touted this idea of cheaper now drugs for weight loss, and I do understand that some people rely on that, and health-wise, they do know that this is a great solution for them. But ironically, it does come at the same moment when people are hungry and they're asking for literally food. And in New York, I witnessed blocks and blocks of queues, right? And people standing in line to get food, which we haven't witnessed that earlier and before. On that, more a bit later. But airlines are scrambling, then trying to figure out what to do. Delta Airlines will cancel about 170 flights today and did cancel. American Airlines canceled 220 flights, and in total, more than 815 flights have been grounded. Also, LaGuardia Airport in New York City came at the ground stop yesterday. They said it's due to wind, and then the wind passed, and for 6 or I think 7 hours, it was still closed. So, JFK is delayed. It says delayed, but if your flight is delayed beyond 12 hours, is it a delay or is it a cancellation? So what you need to know is that if you are traveling, please check with your airline as to what the delay looks like. and know that you always can demand a voucher or some payback, even if your ticket was not refundable. This is the latest that I found out on that regard. Also, on my end, there was some travel disrupted. So you do need to know that if this is canceled, not because of you, you do get your either money back or voucher or rescheduling in any way. So, and then more to this shutdown. Schumer, right? Chuck Schumer has offered Republicans a deal to reopen the government if they agree to extend Affordable Care Act subsidies for 1 year. He delivered this speech earlier today, so let's take a look.
Reopens. Therefore, we'd like to offer a simple proposal that would reopen the government and extend the ACA premium tax credits simultaneously, and then have the opportunity to start negotiating longer-term solutions to health care costs. Let's do all three. I've spoken with my caucus, and Democrats are offering a very simple compromise. Democrats are ready to clear the way to quickly pass a government funding bill that includes health care affordability. Leader Thune just needs to add a clean 1-year extension of the ACA tax credits to the CR so that we can immediately address rising health care costs.
And so, yes, some people see it as weakness. Others see it as a smart way to also have a precursor to the next midterm elections, right? Because if we do agree to that now and it extends ACA by 1 year, then we do face exactly the same problem and topic before the next before the next midterm elections, right? Because yes, we still would have ACA available, but people will be questioning what is next. So in this regard, yes, it is kind of smart. But then what we need to pay attention to that the Republicans started posting this type of messages all across the socials saying it's a horrible idea. Dems proposing 1-year extension of ACA subsidies to CR. We might as well go home and start over again. It's disappointing that they think that this is what's going to open the government. And then my follow-up question is then what is going to open the government? Do you really want to open the government? Right? Because you can come up with so many excuses and you can produce so many false statements by the White House that this are masked under some type of readouts or press releases, but those are just manipulative propaganda pieces. And we can read as many as we want. And no, I'm not going to show it to you because I don't want to spread this nonsense. But if everything, whatever you present it with, faces the answer no, right, and some type of opposition, then the question is you probably are not willing to open the government. And perhaps it's not coming even from you, but from the top. So then speak. Speak. Who tells you to not negotiate, right? Because that will be, airline is one story, but people being hungry and losing healthcare, I think it's even bigger. I know travel is important. I know. And I do know also that if Trump were to impose some type of, act, right, and restrict us in any way, or say that we had an insurrection or whatever, and we are paralyzed, right? If the borders are closed, the next thing you rely on is flying, right? And if flying is grounded, then we cannot leave. I do understand this as well. And it's as much as it sounds like some type of conspiracy theory, I think at this point it's quite realistic to think about it and actually wise. But on the other hand, travel is less important than food and healthcare. So, but I mean, I don't think we're choosing here because both is being stripped away. Now, White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett warned Friday that economic fallout from the shutdown is far worse than expected, though the U.S. economy is likely to rebound quickly once the government reopens. So are you trying to get less people in the United States? Just kill them, just create some type of holodomor, and then everything will be bombastic. And my problem is that there's never a follow-up from the media. There is never a follow-up even to this nonsense kind of statement coming from the current Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who wants to be called Secretary of War. And I think he does deserve this title at this point because US is trying to start a war within the country, in the Caribbean, against Greenland, against Canada, against, we are all over the place, right? Nigeria is the new country that we kind of want to bomb, right? And then we're also building Trump Gaza. So we are everywhere. We're like this warmongering octopus with everything everywhere. But then Pete Hegseth delivered this type of statement, and please pay attention to the very end of this video. And again, there was no follow-up after in any way. So
our warfighters require the depth of capabilities to deter any aggression and, if necessary, decisively defeat any enemy that dares to challenge America. We're talking here about transformation, not toothless reform, and we're seeking it fast. Now, some will say that any effort to reform the Pentagon bureaucracy is punishment for real or perceived slights. We think that's nonsense. I'm not here to punish, we're here to liberate. I'm not here to reform, but to transform and empower. We mean to save the bureaucracy from itself. Because the chairman and I talk about this all the time. This is a 1939 moment, or hopefully a 1981 moment. A moment of mounting urgency. Enemies gather, threats grow, you feel it, I feel it. If we are going to prevent and avoid war, which is what we all want, we must prepare now.
Crazy, right? And there was this beautiful comment from X that you can listen to me without headphones. And I'm so happy about it that you're at work now and you can listen to me without headphones. And thank you so much. But this disappeared for some reason. I can't highlight it. But Mike is here and you say, my question would be, if the economy will be better when everything reopens, why not open it now? And that is the key question. That is the key question. And Mike, I think you should start speaking for the Democratic Party because they have to put it on every single banner and probably their forehead as well. So that will come to the forefront. He can't even save himself from himself, right? With Pete Hegseth. But again, there is no follow-up. I understand that Pete drinks and he has issues, but he suddenly mentions 1939. And if you have taken a single, perhaps history class, you probably have heard about World War II and how it all began and what did happen in 1939. But again, we're just spreading this, right? And I understand that also in liberal circles, we're spreading this and we say, oh my God, there's nothing, but we're adding to them without to their nonsense and domination of the news cycle and this clickbaity stuff without getting any substance. I think instead of sharing this and saying, oh my God, look what he said, let's ask ourselves and others, why did he say that? And add what happened in 1939. Because then people who probably don't know, I mean, at this point, I have encountered so many people in the United States who have no idea about anything. So spreading information, factual information is really important, or share sources that actually do make sense. And this all is in your newsletter. Now let's talk about the C5+1. Yes, this is Central Asian folks who traveled to Washington, D.C. yesterday. I call them salespeople of Vladimir Putin. Why? Because, for instance, Kazakhstan, right? You see Aliyev on the right hand side from Trump with the blue tie. And Kazakhstan is, at this point, factually, the biggest buyer of oil from Russia. Kazakhstan does not need oil from Russia, but it is used as a middleman to then sell this oil to China under different flags, labels, and whatnot. So these folks here, they closed a bunch of deals, and I'll tell you all about it. Now, two things that I want you to keep in mind. First, these guys here are Putin's guys. They're working with him closely. They are united. They're sort of satellite states. And so when they close deals, count on it unless you see proof of something reverse. Count on it to have Putin somehow be a player in this type of deal. So whenever they purchase something from Russia, they sell further, and then they close deals with the United States, and you don't know what United States will be getting or who is actually buying ultimately from United States, because these countries are used as the middleman most often. Second point, there is nothing in writing. Again, once again, White House announced there's deals and there's frameworks and billions, gazillions, trillions, nothing in writing, nothing binding. There is no readout. There are just those PR videos. And I call them PR videos because we see this, meetings with foreign leaders at a table where you can see the cankles, you can see the hands, you can see that it's, once again, this is the constellation of The Apprentice, when we saw Trump saying, "You fired," type of story where he feels almighty. And it works because recently he falls asleep when he's not behind this type of table. This was yesterday, obviously, when they talked about the fat loss drugs, and one gentleman fell, and you see them raising his legs above his head. Trump was bored. It was not about him. But then when they proceeded talking, he just kept sleeping, physically sleeping. And he woke up, kept sleeping again. So what excites him, of course, is the Hobby Lobby, Gilded Age, whatever that happens to the White House, and then showing off his new Walk of Fame, where instead of President Biden's picture, you see Autopan's picture. Everybody's ha ha he he. And then whoever made this AI slop, thank you, because that's exactly how the beast, I guess, will look like. But I think it lacks something on top, like a little something on top. I think it's not fancy enough, okay? But altogether, when he's meeting these foreign leaders under this table, with a very close-up table and people right and left, he can't fall asleep. There's so much light. So what we hear is the same old rally-like topics and speeches. We don't get information. We get clickbaity PR series. Biden was bad. I solved 8 wars, sometimes a different number. Everybody's praising him. And then they announce some type of numbers. We never get anything in writing. We never get anything binding, nor we hear whatever the White House says from the opponents that were literally at the same meeting. Keeping that in mind, here's what was at this meeting. Uzbekistan will buy and invest more than 100 billion in the United States over 10 years, while Kazakhstan will join Abraham Accords. Keyword will. When Kazakhstan also announced it's signing 17 billion in commercial deals. Again, who are these people with Kazakhstan? Is it Russians dealing with us and bypassing sanctions? Where does Kazakhstan get 17 billion? Okay. And leaders of Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan visited the White House, as you saw in the picture. These 5 Central Asian states hold significant copper, gold, rare earth, and nearly half of global uranium output, making them central to global race for critical minerals. And let's stop here. This is needed for the United States, regardless where they come by from and if Putin is a player here or not, because we keep effing up with China. And China holds the cards in that way, and they do control their minerals exports that we rely upon. Kazakhstan entry into Abraham Accords could bring major dividends, said President Tokayev, who told that the New York Times. Sergio Gore, right? Sergio Gore is a Kremlin affiliate who sort of bounced into the White House. He actually into Mar-a-Lago first, and he oversaw Trump's campaign. Then he became his chief of, sort of wise chief of staff type of story. He was helping with hiring, and then he now is the ambassador to India. His real name is not Gore, it's Gorchevsky or Gorevsky or something Russian. And he says he grew up in Greece, but all that is questionable. Now, he's now U.S. ambassador to India and special envoy to South and Central Asia. He told officials they would have a direct line to the White House. They said, call me, I'll get you the deals approved like that on the phone. A bipartisan group of senators introduced a bill this week to repeal the 1974 legal provision limiting U.S. trade with former Soviet economies. But, very funny. Important. We need to see these deals in writing to understand what's being purchased by whom, in what quantities, and in what timeline. Until then, these announcements remain unverified. So I do recommend a bit of a follow-up. We do have already a bit of a library to introduce to you here at Honest. So if you're not following news every day, so first, please watch Honest Plus Deep Dive on Russia's shadow fleet. Their explanation about the hubs and how Kazakhstan plays a role and what Turkey plays what kind of role and how China profits off of it. So you can understand the framework, the actual framework. Then read the APEC 2025 review, where Trump's unwritten deals left Asian leaders seeking clarity. I was in a meeting with diplomats from Asia who spoke about what happened at ASEAN and APEC. Okay. Then also read the most recent, what I published today, expert review on APEC deals from the ambassador of South Korea, speaking about how many meetings they had. What role does China play? China is hosting the next APEC. And yes, next APEC will be in November. But guess when? China is now, will be hosting monthly meetings with all APEC leaders to prepare for the main APEC next end of October, they said. Guess when? December 17 of this year. Every year, China will be meeting with all these leaders, preparing the deals, and to announce whatever something stable by the end of October next year. So you do already have them dominating the space, and US is not part of conversation. US is on the golf course or at Mar-a-Lago in some gilded Halloween party. So speaking of China, China is the last partner you want to rely on because, yes, China is good for China. China is planning long term. For them, and I spoke to them directly, for them, it doesn't really matter who is the leader. Is it Xi Jinping? Okay, great. Will be Ping Ping? Okay, great. Whoever will be the leader, they're thinking long term. They're thinking about the dynasty, they're thinking about history. That's why they say we were there while the United States wasn't even a country. We will be here while you perish. This is their saying, right? And this was at the UN, and they openly state that. Now, but they do not follow the law. They follow their own antiques, their own interests. They continuously keep posting that Taiwan is theirs, has never been theirs. They think about, they also threaten Philippines. They threaten as much as far as even New Zealand, right? Hosting this type of training between Australia and New Zealand. So it's all being very pro-China. China is pro-China and anti-everybody else. And this was a very big topic yesterday at this Asia Society discussion because China is dominating in AI. As much as the US ambassador to APEC said US is by far leading in AI, everybody was giggling. I mean, seeing the Asian experts and leaders in the same room reacting to US statements was something interesting. So China is leading in AI, and so which leads to the world playing by their rules and standards. And if you recall, I did interview the Taiwanese, senior national security advisor, Dr. Yu Li, and recently, and he said, whatever China does in AI, they use it to manipulate other countries, to infiltrate other countries, and to control other countries and their own citizens. So with us making them the leader and us being United States, not present, that leads to this. And that's why the discussion yesterday was more so as to living in the world where China is this almighty power will feel very different because this is not a democracy and they're very pro themselves and anti everybody else, if you think really about it. Now, China should follow the law. Cagayan de Oro, it's a representative, Rufus Rodriguez, issued a forceful statement at the Interparliamentary Alliance on China in Belgium, condemning Beijing's actions in the South China Sea. Rodriguez said Manila has filed more than 200 diplomatic protests, yet coercive actions in the West Philippine Sea continue. So here's a video of him. He does speak English, so please take a look.
Philippines has filed since 2022 245 diplomatic protests for China's attacks and dangerous behavior in the West Philippine Sea, our 200-mile canal. So, Mr. Chairman, this year alone, 47 protest notes because China's vessels have been water tunneling and ramming our Philippine vessels and laser targeting our Philippine Coast Guard ships. I call on all our members of the IPAC to join the Philippines in urging China to follow international law for the stability and peace of our region. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Right? And the Asian partners do see it. And they said, well, the biggest takeaway yesterday was from the South Korean part that China wants to be the leader, but then you will have to win trust. And you have to get our trust. And we don't trust you. And we don't trust you for decades and generations. We don't trust you, period. So us accepting you as a leader, as much as we did, right? Past tense. Accept US as the leader will be very difficult. We do not trust you. Now they don't trust US either, by the way. So, in other news, European Union announced tightened visa rules for Russians today. Here's a bit of a preview. Remember, we talked about the 19th package of sanctions that EU leaders were discussing, and then this were to include the visa ban for Russian citizens from traveling to Schengen area. Schengen area is not necessarily EU. It's open borders within European countries. Not all countries that are in EU are in Schengen. Not all Schengen are EU, but EU is economic union. Schengen is open borders, so people can migrate, work elsewhere, and travel, right? Okay. So if you do get a visa, if you're not familiar with that, if you do get a visa for Germany, you can travel within all Schengen area. You can go to Italy, you can go to Poland, you can go Belgium, Netherlands, those who are within the Schengen area. Also, visas are multi-entry. So if you do get a visa for 30 days or half a year or a year, whatever, right? It depends on what your purpose is, whether it's tourism or studying or work, right? You can enter, right? Enter and re-enter. So you travel to Belgium, you got a visa for Belgium for half a year. And you go to Belgium, you come back to Russia or other country, and you can re-enter, and this time go to Italy, or this time go to, you got the point. So in the 19th package, EU wanted to ban entry for Russians, period. Folks like Yulia Navalny said, no, regular Russians don't deserve it, yada, yada, yada. Then European Union leaders also came up with the reason not to include that in the package because then they want to make money off of tourism. They said, well, there's wars, there's this, we're raising the number of percentages of GDP to be dedicated to military defense. So, yeah, we want to kind of, boost culture, exchange, and travel. Okay, and Russians purchase luxury goods in Europe. It's a very given point. So this was not included. Now European Union is talking about the next package, and now they did announce a tightened rules. Not part of any package, but a tightened rule is this, that Russians will not be granted multi-entry. They will be still receiving visas. They can still travel within the Schengen area, but they cannot come back to Russia and come back into EU using the same visa. So even if you got a visa for half a year, you can come in, you can stay half a year essentially, and come back. But if you come in for a day and you leave, all your other days expire. Yes? Clear. So, but they did, within this thing, they also entered an exception. Because I'm a nerd and I read documents. I studied EU policy. I did work placement in EU parliament. I mean, in Brussels. So you pay attention to what they write in, right? Because it all sounds very nice. And then read the tiny print. That's where they always bend over, like here. It does include exceptions for dissidents, journalists, and human rights activists. And you might think, it's great, right? Logical. Okay. But first of all, when we talk about regular Russians that Navalny said they deserve to travel, right? Even for one-time entry. I just explained to you, you can come in and stay for half a year. You can travel within all different countries, and you are the regular Russian. You're not even considered here dissident or journalist or human rights activist. But polls in Russia show that 66% of Russians support peace talks, while 78% support actions of the Russian army. And peace talks means give us Donbass, give us all these Ukrainian regions that they desire. Crimea is ours, right? So being pro-peace talks is also a stretch here. Overall support for the war in Russia today remains 70 to 75%, depending on the region. Opposition is below 20%. Now, EU leaders rejected this full travel ban and prioritize tourism revenue. And then this is exception here that kind of allows FSB associated actors to travel. And here's the context and the details. So this is current operations. Russian disinformation tactics work this way. There is identity theft, stealing identities of real journalists. And it was confirmed they stole identities of France 24 channel journalists. Fake accounts. Doppelganger and Matryoshka operations use hundreds of thousands of millions of fake accounts, hundreds of thousands or millions of fake accounts. You can't even track it. So, operational methods, fake news sites, social media amplifications, election interference, undermining Ukraine support. Hard to track. Focus is on campaigns, not individuals' operatives. So my question is here for European Union is, are you now producing clickbaity headlines so we think that you are doing something, that you're so against Russia, while you still keep purchasing from Russia? But if we do read the fine print, and here at Honest and all of us here, we do read the fine print. And the fine print tells us that whatever you produced here is bogus. So, good news. In Russia, a Coast Guard ship was undergoing repairs, but it accidentally went to sleep. Take a look here. Look at this. Isn't that a beauty? Yeah, well, gone. Good repairs. Good news is there's nothing to repair anymore. Very nice. Michael says, shouldn't dissidents apply for asylum instead? Yeah, and it's also like a thing where, do you remember, Michael and others, when Biden exchanged the murderer, FSB murderer agent who was in Germany? He convinced Scholz to free him. And that guy literally murdered a guy in Berlin, in broad light, like daytime. He was in jail for that. At that point, Biden convinced him to be freed, or convinced Scholz to free this guy and exchange him for the war prisoners in Russia, those so-called dissidents, right? That are pro-Yulia Navalny, and they're this opposition, right? And Mirza and all others, they came, Kurza, what's his name anyway? Doesn't matter. So 3 of them came out and they gave a press conference. And in that press conference, I did cover it about a year ago, maybe longer, more than a year ago at this point. And one of them, in that press release in Berlin, US facilitated it. The Biden administration facilitated it, right? In the presser, upon his release, one guy said, I wish I was in prison because I don't want to be in Germany. I want to come back to Russia. Russia, give me a return back. I don't want to be in Germany. I hate Germany. And then you see Karamurza, that's one of the journals. So since then, a year has passed. Check what they produce. Crimea is ours. We don't support Putin's war, but we support defending Russian speakers in Ukraine. We support reunification, and it's mostly about Crimea being theirs and about trade resuming with the United States and European partners, and Russia being seen as the democracy that they envision. Those are the dissidents. We have to always pay attention to what the hell they're saying, because we can't go by labels these days, you know? Same story, to bring it back home. You open your phone, and I, as a journalist, do. And I do receive press releases from the White House. And I do, and I can show you one, right? I did post it earlier, this whole thing today. Where is it? Here. Okay, so here, you get your press release, right? And you think, okay, White House, press release, great. Here I'm reading it to you. And the labels, right? That's my whole point, is we can't go by labels. Labels being White House, press release. Yes, important, right? Truthful. The press release reads, for immediate release, Democrats up to blame for airport chaos. Make no mistake, Democrats shutdown tantrum, now dragging into its 38th day of misery, is a brazen, demented betrayal of the American people. Now, as FAA safety restrictions loom like a guillotine over holiday flights, Democrats are inflicting their man-made catastrophe on Americans just trying to make life-saving medical trips or get home for Thanksgiving. This is propaganda. So White House and press release, those labels, now are not really relevant, because you do know, under this pretense, you are consuming, and these folks are populating propaganda. This is a lie. It's not truthful. And then when I speak to diplomats, and at ANGA 80, I spoke to different people, who work with the heads of state, the teams of heads of state. And I said, do you know what happens in the United States? And they said, yeah, Trump is trying to defend sovereignty of the United States, and clans from the ultra lefty, whatever. I said, no, here's executive orders, and I start explaining, and without context, they take this crap here at price value, because they're not here, nor it's their job to dive in and understand our internal politics, right? But we are smarter than this. So when you think about it, like, there is these deals. Think about framework. Is there anything in writing? Is there anything solid? Can you pick any data? No. Okay, bogus. Does this sound like a clickbaity thing? Bogus. Just try to seek through or see through this crap, because we can't go by labels anymore. Dissidents. Okay, who are they? What do they say, right? And to the point where, Michael, you're right. You say, does Russia have journalists? Exactly. Somebody's a journalist. All right, let's see what you write. Let's see what you talk about. You're clickbaity crap. Maybe you're a TikToker. Maybe you're this. Maybe you're that. No. Okay. If somebody's legit, great. Fantastic. Welcome to the team. Madman says, bless what you do. Back to work. Indeed. And so, right, it just... Okay. So, other visit. Pro-Putin's Orbán visited Washington, D.C. Before that, he posted a picture full of FSB agents traveling with him to Washington, D.C. But okay, he met with Trump. Trump called him a great leader, pointed at him. Trump welcomed him warmly, and then, despite Hungary's deep reliance on Russian oil. Here's a key context. Trump is pressuring Europe to stop buying Russian energy. Hungary remains one of the most Russia-dependent economies in the EU. Orbán arrived seeking energy sanctions exemptions and possibly a path to US-Russia meeting. Hungary recently regained full status in the US visa waiver program, signaling improved relations. Hungary relied on Russia for 74% of its gas and 86% of its oil in 2024. International Monetary Fund warns that EU-wide gas cutoff could trigger about 4% GDP losses for Hungary. but they do have access to oil. Trump's idea is that because Hungary is not near a sea, as he says, they cannot get shipments. There are pipelines that they can get access to. I mean, let's not get this dumb here. So, and there's the quote from this meeting that is about Ukraine. Trump says, "So you would say that Ukraine cannot win that war?" Orbán says, "A miracle can happen." Trump, "Yeah, that's right." And then Orbán explains as to why Ukraine would not be winning and what, according to him, is the problem in the EU. Take a listen.
But at the same time, we are not unified because Brussels and the Europeans has a different approach to the war. So the only pro-peace government is the United States government and the small Hungary in Europe anyway. All the other governments prefer to continue the war because many of them think that Ukraine can win on the front line, which is a misunderstanding of the situation. So it's a complicated issue.
To both of you.
So you would say that
Will that be
Ukraine
a-
cannot win that war?
Miracle can happen.
Yeah, that's right.
What concerns me here is that Trump shares the opinion of the last person he spoke to. That's the last person, and he goes into his Mar-a-Lago naked women resort. And over the weekend, he can start tweeting, and right, because that is the last opinion he shares until he speaks to somebody else. So, meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron arrived in Mexico. I do have a picture here, lovely. On Friday, today, the first visit by French leader in 11 years. He was received by President Sheinbaum for talks focused on trade, security cooperation, and cultural diplomacy. Both governments announced they relaunch the Franco-Mexican Strategic Council, expanding collaboration in airspace, energy, education, and science. And full readout is as a separate article on Honest Network. Please go ahead, read it. Shorter version, it's in your newsletter that will arrive right after we're done here. So also, Macron pointed out that they do have around 700 French companies operating in Mexico, and he is willing to invest in it and support Mexico in that regard. It was also kind of bold of him because this is all this happening as a precursor to the EU celiac summit, not celiac disease, but so it's EU and the Caribbean countries essentially. And why is it controversial here? Because Trump made it controversial. So several EU leaders like Chancellor Merz and President of EU Commission Ursula von der Leyen said that they will not be visiting this EU Caribbean summit, although they worked on this for a year at least, because they don't want to piss off Trump, who is now executing people in the Caribbean, right? So also, another major highlight was an agreement to exchange or loan pre-Hispanic art to mark 200 years of diplomatic relations, including Mexico's request for temporary return of the Codice Escatitlan. Sorry for mispronouncing. Anyway, it's held in France since 1898. And again, this visit was seen by Mexico and by Caribbean, also partners in the Caribbean, that France is standing for itself alone and is not being manipulated by Trump's tantrums. Now, as to EU and Caribbean Summit on Sunday, it will happen. It will be held in Colombia. Several major EU leaders, as I mentioned, declined to attend to avoid upsetting Trump, who is determined to scope of the U.S., who's determining the scope of the U.S. military mission in the Caribbean. For facts, U.S. strikes in the region have killed at this point at least 66 people in 16 strikes. They're assumed to be drug dealers, but why are they executed? There's no death penalty for selling drugs, at least in this region. And we have never seen any investigation as to who those people even are. Now, not that selling drugs is good. It's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say we need due process. What's new is that at least 3 U.S. military aircraft, including a heavily armed attack plane, are now from today on, operating out of El Salvador's main international airport. So now, with all this crap, El Salvador, that is also welcoming our deportees, so to speak, holding them in whatever conditions. This is how they're also involved in this Caribbean operation. So this is expanding the US military buildup in the Caribbean. Again, we're talking about heavily armed attack plane, at least 3 US military aircraft operating from El Salvador's main international airport. As to Ukraine updates, as I mentioned, Ukrainians are so happy to welcome Angelina Jolie. Obviously, she's a celebrity, but she's also UN envoy and ambassador, so to speak, and everybody's very excited to welcome her to Ukraine. And it's pretty badass, for the lack of better word, because she's there 1 kilometer away from the front lines, from the Russian forces, and they do have this protection, anti-drone protection, so it's constantly being bombed and bombarded. So she here is receiving border guards presented her with national symbols of Ukraine and commemorative coins. Also, what's also again interesting, that what I mentioned about UNESCO here, that Ukraine won election to UNESCO Executive Board with a record of 137 votes. So this is very interesting, and using this as an opportunity to recommend to you to watch our Curating Culture episode. It's here for you on YouTube, about New York City's hidden museum. Yes, but here you learn about the Rarick Pact, and Rarick is the artist that you see on the left-hand side. His Rarick Pact became the foundation of UNESCO. And that's where you learn how it all happened and why. And he dedicated his life, adult life, to convincing countries to protect their art and cultural heritage during war. So really recommending to watch this. It's in Curating Culture playlist on YouTube, free again. And there, the director of the museum is guiding you through the museum, telling about Rarick, and there's pieces where you can learn. Very interesting, calming, not anxiety inducing in any way, but I really, really would ask you to watch it. Now, in other quick national news, very long broadcast here today. So, okay, you got a drink, you got a snack, get it. So, quick national news, let's cruise through it. Musk is on track to become world's first trillionaire. Musk could become this under his new Tesla Pay package, which ties compensation to extremely ambitious production, market share, and valuation goals. Financial analysts say that if Tesla regains its global EV lead and achieves its AI and robotics milestones, Musk's net worth could surpass 1 trillion within the decade. I think it will be sooner because he's getting all the, he's winning all the contracts for Pentagon, like 2 billion. He just literally got this week. Now, U.S. consumer sentiment fell sharply in early November amid deepening fears of economic disruptions from the prolonged government shutdown, now the longest in U.S. history. The previous one was 34 days, also under Trump. Households report concerns across party lines. Halted food benefit payments, unpaid federal workers, and grounded flights are all driving the downturn. The Trump administration asked the Federal Appeals Court to halt a judge's order requiring the USDA to issue full November SNAP benefits to 42 million Americans. The president, many, I guess, apparently, allegedly voted for, is trying not to feed you. The EPA approved 14 exemptions for small refineries under national biofuel blending rules and denied 2. So 14 they approved, they denied 2, effectively clearing the backlog that accumulated under Biden administration. Now, a house cleaner in Indiana, this is crazy, was shot and killed by residents after mistakenly arriving at the wrong home. She came to clean and mistakenly knocked on the wrong door and got executed. She was mother of 4 children, prompting renewed calls for the reforms that they have in Indiana. It's called Stand Your Ground laws. Also, in Virginia, a jury awarded $10 million to a teacher shot by her 6-year-old student last year. The case has renewed scrutiny of school security and firearm shortage laws. Wow. Meanwhile, in D.C., federal prosecutors are investigating Mayor Bowser for alleged corruption tied to Qatar-funded trip in 2023. Her office denies wrongdoing, saying the travel was routine diplomatic engagement. But somebody has just got a gift, a plane from Qatar, which is now Air Force One, and we're paying for refurbishing it, and nobody's investigated. What are you talking about? What corruption? The Supreme Court ruled that the Trump administration may stop issuing passports with self-identified gender markers, reversing a Biden-era policy and sparking immediate pushback from LGBTQ advocacy groups. Also, according to draft obtained by Reuters, the Trump administration will require countries receiving U.S. global health aid to share data on pathogens that could spark epidemics, not noting global transparency failures during recent outbreaks. But then you know that they will twist this data and present it however it fits the agenda. Yeah, kind of looks that way. Meanwhile, Pope Leo's of the Trump administration, especially immigration policies, has strengthened Catholic social service groups assisting migrants, particularly those caught in ICE enforcement actions. And in other news, DC sandwich guy, the former DOJ employee who threw sandwich at ICE agent, is now free to go. He has been freed and he's not being prosecuted. It was a 3 months long effort by prosecutors to put him in jail, and they failed, and he's now free to go. With little public attention due to shutdown, 3 Air Force major commands received new leaders this week. The Space Force officially renamed Space Operations Command to Combat Forces Command, emphasizing its warfighting posture. Also, there was some breaking news as I went live now about an hour ago that Access through the past 9 months, he has fired over 24 generals and admirals. So those who were seated in this meeting and listening that they're fat and ugly and whatever, most of them or several of them are gone. The Senate voted down a measure requiring congressional approval for military action against Venezuela, the second failure in a month. Only 2 Republicans broke with the administration. The U.S. military says it must transition away from static satellite constellations toward dynamic space operations, the so-called DSO, to remain competitive. DSO includes rapid satellite repositioning, autonomous maneuver, and resilient communications. And lastly, Army Secretary Daniel Driscoll said that U.S. Army plans to buy at least 1 million drones within 2 to 3 years, with annual procurement potentially reaching several million. The goal is to meet the demands of modern drone-centric warfare. But all of this is fulfilled by Peter Thiel's companies. So don't keep your head on a swivel. Now, as to quick global news, UN meeting, UN gathered today to review United States human rights record. And that meeting was not attended by United States. Alarming rights groups who say Washington's absence signals a retreat from global human rights engagement at a critical moment. Meanwhile, Russia demanded clarity from Washington over what it's called contradictory signals regarding a possible resumption of U.S. nuclear testing. Moscow warned also that any move toward renewed nuclear tests would trigger responses. I mean, there's no week where Russia doesn't threaten us with the nuclear war. So I guess no news is good news. Meanwhile, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova criticized Serbia after President Vučić of Serbia suggested Serbian weapons may reach Ukraine. They said, we're going to sell it to anybody, and if they sell to a third country, we don't monitor it, to put it diplomatically. So Russia is upset. And U.S. lifted sanctions on Syrian, now new president, Ahmad al-Shara. One day after UN Security Council removed its own measures, al-Shara is expected to meet Trump next week in this controversial diplomatic engagement. He went to meet with Putin. Putin wanted to maintain and get a hold of Russian Air Force and maritime bases in Syria. Al-Shara was smiling, shaking hands, then returned to Syria and said, oh, no, only if you give us Assad back so we can prosecute him domestically and publicly, which did not happen. So all this questionable. So now he's using this arm of, trying to use US to maneuver with Russia. So let's see. Now, more than 100 countries were moving toward a major pollution reduction agreement when Trump administration officials, including Secretary of State, threatened and pressured foreign leaders to abandon the pact. Saudi Arabia has executed hundreds of people this year, including many foreign nationals convicted of low-level smuggling. Human rights groups warn the pace is accelerating. So we are executing people who are smuggling drugs in the waters, and they're doing it physically. Great. Not great. An Iranian-American man was sentenced to prison for traveling to Israel 13 years ago to celebrate his son's bar mitzvah. His family says he's being used as political pawn. Now, as to Swiss farmers, Trump's tariffs on Swiss dairy led to low exports from Switzerland. Switzerland is also very much known for chocolate, and milk plays a role in chocolate, you feel me? And so there's very low exports from Switzerland. So they now have oversupply of milk. And their decision, while they're way out of this problem, is slaughtering cows to stabilize the market. We'll see how this goes. So much to the neutral Switzerland. NATO Secretary General Rutte visited Romania. U.S. is withdrawing troops from Romania. He met with the president of Romania, Nicolae Shutdown. He met with their defense ministry, and they're trying to figure out how to protect Romania without U.S. forces. Now, in Greece, a senior L3 Harris official said Greece is close to selecting a new generation EW suit for upgraded F-16 fighters, a key step in modernizing its air capabilities. Also, UK, Japan, Italy officials say that the 6th generation GCAP fighter will carry diverse armaments and team with multiple autonomous loyal wingman drones. More of that is also, those quick news is in your newsletter. I want to quickly get into Sudan. We don't talk enough about the war in Sudan, about 80,000 people being slaughtered, people being decapitated, hung, killed in any way possible. Just commercial satellite images are showing how many people are just dead. There's bodies everywhere, and they know there is a body because they see the blood stains on sand, and it's just a horrific motion, and we don't talk enough about it. The Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, said it accepted U.S.-Arab ceasefire proposal. So now Saudi Arabia is trying to get to a ceasefire here. They're asking U.S. to mediate. This is Marco Rubio involved here. The Sudanese army insisted it will defeat RSF militarily. Previous mediation attempts have repeatedly failed in the 2-year civil war. And by the way, yesterday I attended Aurora Humanitarian organization's 10th anniversary. It was a very warm and really uplifting event. It was held at Ellis Island. We all traveled by ferry there. There were honorees, there were laureates, and I did interview the CEO of the organization, and the full video with also footage of traveling to Ellis Island, being there, people performing, and also, of course, they're talking about their achievement. Also, Chelsea Clinton was there, and other honorees like Milken and Bernstein and others, and most importantly, laureates. And I did interview them. For instance, one lady, she was honored, and she was one of the 4 finalists, but she did not win the $1 million prize, although all of them get some type of funding. She has been saving children for 30 years. And she is a bit older right now. And she said, I asked her, how did it all start? And she said she she was a British artist living in Spain, and on the television she was they were talking about the war in Kosovo, and the woman came to a camera crew and said, why is nobody helping us? And she had children and they couldn't escape bombardments, and she said that resonated with me. And so she traveled to Kosovo. She made through thick and thin and in between. She went to war zones. She saved children. Then in Kosovo, in Serbia, and leading up to Gaza and Ukraine, and in Ukraine alone, she saved 145 children. And she just described this whole, then the first in Kosovo, she saved a girl. There was a girl with her mother, and when she was talking to them, there was an attack exactly in that spot, and the shrapnel hurt the girl. The mother died, and the girl lost her arm. The girl had a brother there, and so she rescued the brother and the girl, brought to the hospital. And in the hospital, they had only medicine for one person, and the girl said her brother should get the priority. Ultimately, the little girl lost her arm, and yesterday, 30 plus years later, the girl was there to honor her. So, as I mentioned, it's very human event. I'm not a fan of dinners and awards, but this was just because I do know the foundation was very interesting. And the initial co-founder 10 years ago was the gentleman who co-founded Moderna also. So he made sure to speak about the lack of information about health and how it hurts us and all this. So again, please expect the interview soon. I do have all the footage now, and their PR team sent everything to me. So soon I will put this all together, presumably beginning of next week. But this was really interesting. And I think we have to learn more about people who do real work and who are human. Because with all this, we're talking about news, but what does it all matter, honestly? If you are not safe, if you have nothing to eat, if you're not getting healthcare that you deserve and desperately need, what are we talking about? All of this doesn't really matter. But anyway, this will be next week. So why I'm talking about this is because who won this award of $1 million was the doctor who is in Sudan, keeping a hospital open by himself under bombardments for 2.5 years. And so he, of course, wasn't there. He had a pre-recorded message, and he said, thank you so much. It will help us, but really speak about us, talk about us. Can you imagine? A doctor alone keeps the hospital open for 2.5 years. And he was showing how he's treating kids, and there's no medication even. So anyway, okay. So Israel launched strikes on southern Lebanon. So much to ceasefire. Israel carried out multiple airstrikes targeting Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon, despite last November's ceasefire with Lebanon. This was last November. Prime Minister Netanyahu warned Israel will escalate unless Lebanon reins in Hezbollah. As to Modi, Prime Minister Modi of India, Trump praised him as a great man, saying trade talks are progressing well. The Quad meeting, originally planned for 2025, has been pushed to 2026 amid rising U.S.-India trade tensions. So how good are those talks that you're pushing the meetings to next year? Now, meanwhile, Brazil, Indonesia, Norway, and others pledged $5.5 billion to a new global rainforest preservation fund. Brazil hopes to expand it to 125 billion, from 5.5 to 125, with profits partially rewarded to countries maintaining forest cover. And that's where China comes in, because Brazil gets it from China. Now, other news: Spanish police arrested 13 suspected members of the Venezuelan Tren de Aragua criminal network, recently designated a terrorist organization by Trump. The operation spanned multiple cities. And in China, Chinese exports dropped in October after a month of gains, driven by diversification away from the U.S. But it also, if you think logically, companies, knowing that the tariffs will be due at some point, were buying more. They were restocking. That's why we do still have stuff in the, on Amazon and in the shops, right? And we don't really feel the tariffs yet as of now. So, okay, it's dropping now. Global tariffs on Chinese goods, including by Brazil, India, and Turkey, are rising. Still, China surpassed 3 trillion in exports this year, reaching the milestone faster than ever. And then I wanted to talk about the Arctic. I know we're already 1 hour and 9 minutes in, so I'm not going to bother you with that. So I want you to keep in mind that next Friday, for Honest Plus members, if you are not, check out, maybe you can join us. It's a join button underneath. We will be talking about the evolving strategic landscape in the Arctic. So the session will analyze current developments for Russian, US, and Chinese perspectives, as well as Canada's emerging strategies to protect its sovereignty in the region, undergoing unprecedented geopolitical, militarily, and climate-driven change. And why we're not doing this today? Yesterday I wasn't live, so this is open for everyone. But this will be a deep dive because I did my research and then I thought, why I don't engage diplomats from who know about Russia, diplomats from China, and those who work with the US team here. So what is everybody's interest in the Arctic? We do know, but who's collaborating with whom, which leads me to find more as to what happened in Anchorage and what happened also between Prime Minister Carney and the SAFE Act in Europe, and specifically the latest between Prime Minister Carney and Xi Jinping, because they did have a meeting. We didn't have a readout. It was a fluffy readout from Canada. China is silent, but what did they discuss? It was Arctic mentioned. So give me a week to get more sources. So this will be more so valuable. So if you're Honest Plus member, I know I will serve you well. Also, last Friday of the month, we're always meeting on Zoom. There I already have some off the record stories to share. So all Honest members are invited on Zoom. Last time we talked for 2.5 hours. Doesn't have to be this long, but we do discuss things that I'm not publicly sharing online. And I want to ultimately present a weekend read for you. The link is in our newsletter tonight. If you're not subscribed, please do so. It's all in the description of this episode. It's free. There's no paywall. Earlier this month, researchers in Europe launched a project titled The Authoritarian Stack: How Tech Billionaires Are Building a Post-Democratic America, and Why Europe is Next. So, the authoritarian tech network, the Kingmakers. And there, on this stack, it's a Google stack. It's not a published article. It's just access to their Google, doc. It's not an opinion piece. It's literally, I have a link for you to their Google Doc, just pure research. I got it. It's free. There's no login, whatever needed. It visually maps how Silicon Valley billionaires and their companies are positioning themselves for political dominance. So, J.D. Vance, as they say, propelled to the vice presidency by $15 million from Peter Thiel and became the face of tech right governance. Under the banner of patriotic tech, this new bloc is building the infrastructure of control: clouds, AI, finance, drones, satellites, and integrated system we call authoritarian stack. So the investigation argues these firms increasingly operate as state-like powers, exporting their model to Europe and challenging democratic governance. And if we go back here, you know what made me think twice here? There's this company, right, between Mark Andreessen, that's the one who invested in X, right, and who's also in the White House advisor, whatever, and the 1789 Capital. The 1789 Capital is sponsoring a bunch of democratic liberal TikTokers who are very young. And Andreessen directly sponsors Substack. And the deal with Substack, and we on Honest Plus will dive into that, is essentially to isolate democratic voices. Because when you see somebody fired from ABC, right, or whatever, and it's a voice whom you trust, and now they're on Substack, and they're going live, and they're writing their articles. First of all, Substack is not indexed on Google. Whatever you write on Substack will never show up in Google results. That's a cutout. Also, if you join them as a paid writer, which all of those folks are, then you sign an exclusivity agreement that you write only on Substack. So you isolate it from Google search and you're only flourishing within the Substack theme. And this is funded by Andreessen. And again, we will do another deep dive on that. But I really recommend you to dive in. And tonight's newsletter has links in the beginning to all the APAC reviews, the deals and all that, Shadow Fleet. Then you have the video on the curating culture on the Rarick Pact, and ultimately this readout from this doc, pure research that they really put together well from Europe on the authoritarian pact in the United States, with Vance being the next person touted to be leader, and how this will then progress in Europe, specifically United Kingdom. So please check it out. I know you have a long weekend, but or at least 2 days of the weekend, but please, if you're interested, dive into that. All the links will be in your newsletter tonight. So let's finish off with a bit of comments here. She seems great for Mexico, Mike. Yes. Did you see also Claudia Scheinbaum touched by a guy yesterday? He came in and just touched her and kissed and Michael says, I missed it. Is Macron going to Colombia? Yes, he does. And that's why they see it as of like he has balls type of story. Like everybody's scared of Trump, but Macron goes. Yes. Yes, for the Environment Summit, I think. Yeah. Every day I hope Tesla just goes bottoms up, right? And have you ever driven in Tesla? It feels like a can. I don't maybe I had a wrong Tesla. Hi, Sean. Sean says Musk will be in prison when Trump is gone in the next administration. Yeah. The problem is, read that stack, how far they planted the testicles here. Steven says, so all I hear is Trump will shovel more taxpayer dollars to Tesla to help his body get kickbacks. Yep. Trump is jealous of the black lady mayor. Could be. Absolutely. Long live sandwich guy. Right. And Irene. Hi, Irene. Irene says 2,000 generals may backfire among current former military personnel. Stay tuned. Right. They did over 2 dozen. So more than 24 fired. Thank you for discussing Sudan, Tony. Thank you. And Tony, honestly, when I put this coverage of the event yesterday, it's not about the event or fluffy stuff. Just listening to that doctor, it's a 1-minute thing where he spoke about what they're doing, and they show, from the humanitarian perspective. Humanity is all around us. Embrace it. Yes. Yep. Arctic is important, Mike. Absolutely. And that's why I put together the deep dive, and I was like, okay, well, but I really want to get some information that will inform us, not just repeat whatever is being written everywhere. So let's get it. This authoritarian tech stuff is really important. We must keep eyes on them at all times. Just Lindy. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for being Honest Plus member. So we'll dive into that, but I do have the exact link to that thing. So it's not an article. It's literally their research. So take a look. They're taking over. Yes. So, okay. But for the weekend, I got you a bit of a homework. If you're interested, right, to watch, to read, to check it out, but I want you to leave off with this. Please don't think that you are not capable of causing change and leading up to change, right? We are not helpless. We're not voiceless. As of now, fingers crossed, and we can speak and we can make sure that we first and foremost stay sane, that we stay informed. You do have resources, you have sources, right? Support those who are presenting those factual sources for you, right? If you can support us, please do. We're welcoming it in any way possible. Share things, like, subscribe, right? Share the newsletters. It's not about me, it's about factual information. People need to know what the facts are so you can make better decisions. But please don't give up. Keep the faith, keep the hope, and keep the positivity, because it's important. We run on positivity. We can't survive being depressed and pessimistic and anxious 24/7 and scared, shitlessly scared. And rightfully so. You have a lot of reasons to feel that way. But even if they say fake it till you make it, try to stay optimistic in any way possible, because that will prolong our fight And at this point, that is what it is. And fight is not always angry. It's not always, aggressive and disgusting. No, you can decide how you want to fight. But just even, waking up in the morning and, getting up is also an act of hope. And they said it yesterday, where, if you wake up and you get up and you start going, that's an act of hope. You hope that today will be better than yesterday. So let's all unite together in some kind of positivity, knowing that we can outlive this and we will outlive this. And it's our job to outlive this for those who come after. Okay? So thank you so much for being here. Mike says you're the best. Let's build and keep everyone informed. Thank you, Mike. And we're in this together. Share information. Please, this is very, very important. So optimism give us energy to fight, Lindy. Yes, absolutely. We have to stay optimistic. We have to. I don't know about you. I can't survive being depressed. I overeat. So, oversleep, overeat, and it's like becoming disgusting. So let's keep it. Okay? So keep your head on a swivel. Have a peaceful weekend. Stay warm. If you're on this side of the world, it's getting cool. So stay cool. You have a bit of a homework, and the newsletter is coming very soon. Thank you for being here. Have a good night.